Welcome to Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975 respectively. And in between our podcast episodes here, you can read their blogs covering Houston pro sports over on our flagship site, sportsmap.com. On today's episode, we take a peek at what the Astros hope is a future cornerstone of the franchise, or at least a key piece of a blockbuster trade down the road. What kind of momentum swing could we see coming out of the Mariners series? And who do the Astros need back ASAP? And what options does Dana Brown have to remedy the production not coming out of first base, assuming that hope is not a plan? But before all that, the Astros did their best this season when our engagement was at its highest. So if you want the team back on track in the second half, make sure to hit like on this video right now. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe on the channel and click the bell for notifications so you know as soon as new content drops. Thanks to those that have. And if you prefer to listen to your podcast, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search Stone Cold Stros. Charlie, Josh, welcome in. Last episode, we really didn't have a chance to hit on the Astros draft. The main headline for our purposes was Houston selecting lefty hitting infielder Xavier Nyans out of Mount Vernon High, 21st overall. I doubt you're watching this podcast and haven't heard by now, but for those who hadn't, kid grew up a Mariners fan up in the Pacific Northwest. He's a tall shortstop with third base being a possible fallback. High school coach says he's the best player to ever come through Mount Vernon, although I'm not really familiar with their alumni, so not sure how high of a bar that is. But MLB Pipeline grades him well on power and plate approach, but there are some swing and miss concerns. Hey, welcome to the team. Given the dire need for bats at the higher levels of the Houston system, are you surprised to see the organization roll the dice on a prospect coming out of high school instead of going for a more developed college bat?
Not really. I just think teams are true to their board, best player available, upside play. Hey, it's a left-handed hitter. We know they have a dire need for that kind of stuff in the organization, but certainly not a kid who's going to be helping the Astros this year or next year or the year after that, unless he's a true phenom over the next couple of years. We're in an era where seemingly everybody strikes out a lot. You don't like hearing about a high schooler who has some struggles making contact, but prodigious power. No way he's going to wind up a shortstop. And I don't necessarily mean because Jeremy Pena should have the position locked down for at least the next 3 seasons. But he's not talked about as a slick glove guy. Right? His hit tool is the reason he was a first-round pick. This was just not considered to be a real great draft of college bats. So Dana Brown takes a guy that he hopes can become the next left-handed thumper in the Astros lineup post Kyle Tucker and whenever Yordan Alvarez rejoins the dance.
Yeah, I think they went best player available. I think that's what it was. There was kind of a common consensus with a lot of the draft nicks that there were only so many position players, top quality first-round prospects in this draft. And I think the Astros were kind of wondering if one was going to fall to him there at 21, and it did. So I think they just pulled the trigger on the best player they could, even though it's a high school kid. I don't think they care. If he's the best baseball player available, you grab him, and he could eventually be a Pena replacement now that he's hired Scott Boras. I don't know if he'll stay at short or move to third. Who knows? We'll see. 6'4" is pretty tall for a shortstop. He could also end up being a Paredes replacement. You know, he's only on the books for a few more years. So that could be the idea here, that the Astros are – Dana Brown knows the deal. When his guys come up to go hit the market, they don't pay. So you got to keep stocking that farm system. So I really like the play right there. I think it was a good pick. So we'll see how it works. We probably won't know for a few years, but I think the Astros were really happy that he fell to him. And from MLB.com, I'm quoting here, it's possible we look back at the first round and realize the Astros got the best power hitter in the class. And this guy goes on to talk about, some of the swing and miss stuff, but overall, he's got a good arm and dude can hit. So I like the pick.
The Astros organization is mostly bereft of high upside offensive talent. And we may as well include that if you're 6'4" with slug and it's shortstop, third base, that means you could have first base in your future down the line. And it's not like the Astros don't have a need present or future in that area.
You took the words right out of my mouth, but we'll get to that a little later. And I guess it would be ambitious for him to be ready by the time Paredes' deal is up. But hey, stranger things have happened. Cam Smith, anyone. Speaking of Monday's episode, we took a kind of a big picture view of the next 7 series and kind of how it stacked up relative to the Mariners, who enter Friday's series opener 5 games back of Houston in the West. Now, Houston's players got a few days of rest, but they aren't getting anyone back for this series, unfortunately. Obviously, what we've said is a series is just a series, but for 2 rivals that are battling for the division, how much of a momentum swing could we see coming out of this matchup with Seattle?
Well, I think it's just more about the weight of the standings. Right? The Astros started up 5. Hey, out of the All-Star break last year, they were a game back of Seattle. Opened the so-called second half in Seattle, beat the Mariners the first 2 games, and kind of established the tone for what would be the stretch drive where the Astros got control of the race and ultimately put it away at the Mariners' expense. This time it's Seattle trying to slingshot from behind. We're still only just into the back half of July, so it's not like the Mariners are done if they don't win this series. But the doo-doo would get deep. Let's say the Astros take 2 out of 3. They would leave up 6 in the standings, having just won 2 out of 3 without Alvarez, without Pena, without Myers, lengthening their lead at Seattle. They go up 6-4 in the season series, meaning unless they got swept in the remaining series in September at Dyken Park, the Astros would take the season series and have the tiebreaker. So if the Astros go 2 out of 3 in Seattle and then just go 32 and 31 the rest of the way, as long as one of those 32 wins was over the Mariners in September, that would force Seattle to play .619 baseball the rest of the season to reel in the Astros. .619 baseball wins you 100 games over a full season. Now, in shorter stretches, teams can do that. Right? The Astros played over 700 ball in going 29-10. The Blue Jays did it going 28-10. But the Mariners would have to play 100-win baseball for more than 60 games, right? Both teams will have 63 games left after Sunday. So I'm not saying print up those division championship T-shirts yet again if the Astros win the series, but maybe put the printer on standby.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too wrapped up in a 3-game series in July. Maybe if the Astros got swept in this series, then I'd feel a little more about the momentum going there. And also, too, it's how do they lose? Is their shorthanded offense without Pena going to go into Seattle and just against a really tough pitching staff have trouble scoring runs? Okay, well, that makes sense, right? You're down Pena, you're down Jordan. If you lose a close series because offense doesn't quite come through against some great pitching, oh well. But if they come out and Hunter Brown is terrible again in his 3rd straight outing and the pitching is really poor, then that's when I'll get worried. And I don't see that happening with the Astros. The pitching's been very good. So I don't think that'll happen. But that's what would worry me. The only thing that worries me is their strength, the thing they're dominant at pitching. If they come out and they lay an egg against the Mariners, and especially the Hunter Brown thing, because you're really counting on him and Fromber to be those aces at the top of the staff for the rest of the year while you wait for some reinforcements there. So that would be the only real thing that would concern me if Hunter looks poor again and maybe the bullpen falters, like Hader's had some hiccups every now and then. If we start seeing that kind of stuff, that's when I would worry. Otherwise, no, it's a first game coming out of the break and you roll them out there and see where the chips fall.
Yeah, in its aftermath, it's only an ooh series if it's the extreme outcome either way. Or the Mariners sweep, hey, they're within 2. And they would take the lead over the Astros in the season series and have sent up the flare that we're in it, and probably would goose the chances of Seattle saying, okay, let's actually spend a little money, be a little bolder at the trade deadline 2 weeks away. If the Astros sweep, it's an 8-game bulge, and the Mariners realistically are probably thinking, well, we're still in the hunt for the wild card. What are we going to do to try to upgrade for that?
You said bulge. What's interesting is that I think that what plays against Seattle is their record, because Houston currently has the best record in MLB against teams with records above 500. They are 28-19, so plus 9 more wins than losses. And in case you're wondering, the Yankees and Mariners are -3. The Rangers are -8. The next closest team are the Mets and Brewers at +6. Through the first half of the season, I thought of this because Josh, you raised such a good point of like, we keep asking this question of how do we really know, how do we really take or measure these games considering how many people are on the IL right now. Let me ask you guys this. Through the first half of the season, do we know yet who the Astros are, considering we really haven't seen them all play together?
Well, I think we do, just because we know they're a team that it's great pitching and just good enough offense. And we saw them be a bottom third offense to where now they're kind of hovering around the top third in offense. And that's because over the last 30 days, they've really turned it on. And the pitchings, instead of being like arguably the best pitching staff, they're kind of closer to the top 3, top 5, over the last 30 days. But at that same time, the hitting has taken an uptick to where they're more of a top 10 offense, not a bottom third offense. So that's why they've been good over the past month, because the pitching's still dominant, but the hitting's gotten better, even though the pitching's taken just a little bit of a step back. But for them to only take that step back, considering their injuries, man, Astros are in a really great spot here.
Yeah, just 2.5 off the Tigers. American League pace setting, best record coming out of the break. Now, 2 sides to every coin, so they're only 1 game ahead of the Blue Jays in the American League standings among the division leaders. And the pendulum can swing both ways, right? The Mariners now have all their starting pitchers healthy but one. Bryce Miller is working his way back. George Kirby missed the first 2 months of the season. Logan Gilbert missed 6 weeks of the season. They're both building up. Brian Wu, an all-star. Luis Castillo, a solid veteran. So the Mariners are thinking that they can be pitching strong at the level at which they were projected to be coming into the season, where they've been kind of with guys out. Offensively, Julio Rodriguez has been a big second half player the last couple of years after being a pretty crummy first half player. He picked it up before the break. Randy Arozarena went off 8 home runs in 13 games going to the break. And then there's Cal Raleigh. Who among us at the start of the season, if saying who was going to be the best player between the Astros and the Mariners through the first 96 games to the All-Star break, that it would overwhelmingly be Cal Raleigh? I mean, come on. 38 home runs. The record all time for a player who played the majority of his games as a catcher is 48. He's on pace for 64 to break Aaron Judge's American League record, right? Jeremy Pena having a phenomenal season. Cal Raleigh's been better and doing it as a catcher, where he's a Gold Glove catcher and a framer and all that. But I wonder, will the catcher wear down? Now, it's not steaming hot in Seattle, and if they get the odd day it is, they can close their roof. But the dog days of summer still lie ahead. If Cal Raleigh tapers off, the Mariners are 5 games behind the Astros, with Raleigh combining the best of Johnny Bench and Mike Piazza and Pudge Rodriguez at the plate. 38 home runs, 82 runs batted. Jordan's career high for home runs is 37. Cal Raleigh is 38 as of the All-Star break. So if he fades, that's a huge oh no for the Mariners. Well, do other guys pick it up? And again, I'm very curious. The Mariners with a payroll about $60 million, 60, below the Astros. Do they aggressively spend, coupled with the fact the Mariners have a farm system that's graded by some as the best among the 30 big league franchises? As we know, the Astros are close to, if not dead last in the rankings among the 30 franchises. So Seattle has the goods to go out and trade at the high end for whoever the best players truly on the market are. The Astros can't do that before we even get to Jim Crane and would they go over the tax. I think in the end they would for the right player, but do they have the trade chips to get after that player if Seattle wants them, or the Dodgers want them, or the Yankees want them, or any of the 24 plus teams with better farm systems decide, yeah, we want that player, even if it's about not letting the Astros get him as much as it is us getting him.
Yeah, just to piggyback on your points about Raleigh, Cal's had a career season just in the first half of this season. It's been pretty amazing. And to your point about the farm systems, we've seen some comments about, when the Astros were on the run, like, oh, I guess the farm system's a little better than you guys said. Now, I think it all has been very evident. We've always said they develop pitching much more disproportionately than they've been able to develop hitting. And I think the offense has borne that out, especially over this last 6 games. Just a quick message. If you're interested in advertising your service or product on this show, you can contact our friends on the sales team at houston.sportsmap.com/advertise. The link is also in our description. Speaking of comments, and I want to make clear, I don't think everyone who sounds like I don't think everyone sounds like that in our comment section. I just typically have one voice when I want to impersonate people in our comment section. We've had several people in the comment section calling for John Singleton, my guy, Big John, to get called up. But look, we know that's tricky for several reasons. One is they would have to make room for him on the 40-man. Two is that as a veteran, he has no options. So if they have to move on from him, if they have to move him away from the active roster, it means he has to get DFA'd again. 3 is they'd be basically admitting that the guy that they are paying $20 million per to is as washed as his predecessor, whom, by the way, they're also paying $20 million per to not play this year. But let's just say all things were equal, guys. Let's say those complications are not in place. Do you think Singleton would be a net positive to supplement a struggling Christian Walker as a platoon option?
It's a buzzkill if that's your best upgrade at the deadline. But the party line that can be tenably argued is that last season, John Singleton had a 773 OPS against right-handed pitching. Joe Espada would send him up in a pinch hitter role, just hoping for a lucky home run here or there. He's never going to be a good average guy. He's not that in the minors. But he will take a walk, work a count. And if Christian Walker is going to continue to stink, it's not exactly a high bar that you would need to get something to complement Walker that would represent some level of improvement. However, in Christian Walker's 1/2 plus of woe, at the first half, it's 60% of the schedule has already been played. Now, the Astros have seen fewer lefties than any other team in baseball, in part because their lineup is so lopsidedly right-handed. But Walker's been an even worse atrocity against left-handed pitching. His OPS against lefties this season isn't even 500. So the idea of platoon Singleton against some righties and load up Walker against lefties, Walker's been worse than trash against lefties. So if you're thinking, well, reverse the platoon, John Singleton through his entire career has been dead man swinging against left-handed pitching. So it's not a natural platoon other than Walker bats righty, Singleton bats lefty. If you peel a couple of layers of the onion, there's stink there. Also with Singleton, bad defender, right? Walker, it doesn't strike me, eye test, he's playing Gold Glove level D for what would be the 4th consecutive year, but he is a positive defender at first base. So Singleton better be a fairly marked uptick offensively to counteract what would be a decline defensively.
Yeah, I think Singleton's going to have to be making more noise, I think, in the minors before they decide to do this, is make a move, because then that immediately puts all the pressure on Christian Walker. Then you have the fans calling for Singleton after every at-bat where Walker doesn't do something that great. And if we look at it here, I mean, Singleton hasn't been that great. He's hitting just a little over 200 right now. See, Walker, to Charlie's point about the platoon, Walker's hitting 180 off of lefties this year. Singleton for his career hits 212 off of lefties. So like this platoon, it doesn't make a lot of sense at all because Walker's so bad against left-handed pitching. But it's funny. One thing good about Singleton is the power has been there. He's only played 16 games for Sugar Land. He's got 4 home runs. OPS at 850. So while the batting average, he's hitting 219 this season, but with the Astros organization, the Space Cowboys, he's hitting 237. So it's nothing really to write home about with the batting average. But if you look at that power, I get your point, Brandon. 4 bombs in 16 games and OPS at 850. Astros could use that. It could definitely use that. But I think saving face with Christian Walker, unless it gets to be so obvious that they have to make a move with Singleton, I don't think they're going to do it.
What you'd like is for Yainer Diaz to be the guy who, as a rookie, looked like, oh man, this could be a monster of an offensive catcher. And Victor Caratini could take some more playing time at first base. But, you want Caratini getting a fair number of starts behind the plate because he's better than Yainer. The season's beginning its 16th week coming out of the All-Star break. Yainer's drawn 14 walks. His on-base percentage is .280. That's just an ongoing disgrace. Ultimately, the failure is on him. right? The hitting coaches can say, be more patient, stop chasing pitches a foot outside the strike zone every at bat, it seems. But you don't just want to say, well, let Diaz catch every day and Caratini takes half the time at first base because you want Victor behind the plate some.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I wouldn't want John to supplement Walker necessarily. If you brought him up, which I agree, like we've already laid out all the reasons why it's not likely, but I'd want him in there at the very least to DH instead of guys like Cooper Hummel.
Yeah.
Like I understand bringing warm body position players up, calling them up because of depth concerns, but there is zero reason why a player like Hummel should be in the lineup if he's not playing defense. So you already have an option at first base, as you said, Charlie. You've got Victor that can hit from both sides, who can play for a space. So if worst comes to worst, I assume that's where they would go first before calling up John. But I don't know. Like you said, for all the reasons we mentioned, that's probably just not going to happen. It took. Let's expound further upon this Christian Walker thing. I'm sure everyone's would love to hear this. It took Houston about a season and a half to pull the plug on Abreu when Jose Abreu was here. I hate to even talk about this because of just how negative it is, but if Walker continues at the current pace, could we see the same thing happen here, or would he need to fall all the way to the levels of where Abreu was playing out during his second season, which were, by the way, those numbers were dreadful?
I mean, Walker's been a horrible player to this point in the season. He remains a negative WAR guy, meaning basically you could call up a good AAA player and he could do what Christian Walker's done so far this season. And we've talked about the 0-2 counts, seemingly at least once per night, on pace for 173 strikeouts. OPS lower than where Abreu finished 2 seasons ago. I think they're going to hope for some recovery in the second half. Mentioned at least he has the defensive component of his game, whereas Abreu stunk at everything, right? When he was with the Astros. And so if it doesn't turn for him at all in the second half, they're going to be crossing their fingers really hard that it was just the adjustment year. I mean, interleague has blurred the line some, but he did switch leagues and maybe he felt a little pressure of the contract and just never could consistently emerge from the rut and be the player he was over the last 3 years. But if it is full on the road to washed up mode, it's not like they have a first baseman anywhere close in their farm system. And I wouldn't think they'd go out and sign another 30-something guy to replace Christian Walker. So I'll say he is on their roster through at least the end of 2026.
I think there was a lot of focus on Abreu last year, not only because he was so awful, but because the Astros got off to such a terrible start. You got both of those things going together, and there's the guy I'm going to keep blaming every time the Astros lose and go back another game. Whereas this year, got a nice comfy lead in first place coming out of the All-Star break. They're not in so much pressure to start messing around with guys like Christian Walker right now because, to Charlie's point, they don't have anybody really that can replace him that you're excited about. And the team's winning ball games. Why go shine a light on one of the rare misses, it seems, at least so far? I think Dana Brown's done a really nice job. The Caratini signing has looked really good. With obviously the Cam Smith trade with Paredes looking great. We'll see on Bryce Matthews. But overall, he's done a very good job. So they're not going to spotlight one of the rare misses if this does end up being a miss for Dana Brown. So we'll see. I don't know, but I really think when you sent me this question, Brandon, I was like, I almost think it could be almost the exact same way the Abreu thing turned out, where he comes into next year, and then if he's terrible by May or June, they might consider it. If he doesn't get any better this year and then he comes out next year and looks like he's the same guy, he might be on the same trajectory as Abreu, unfortunately. And it depends. I'll be curious to see, do they make some contingency plans in the offseason? Do they add some backup to this roster in case first base doesn't shake out with Christian Walker? I'll be paying attention to that this offseason.
It's wild that we're having this conversation considering all of the saga that we thought was in our rear view, with Jose Abreu. We thought, they fixed it with Christian Walker. So, and I think the three of us were fairly positive on the move. Like, so I can't sit here and say, oh, I saw this coming. Like, it's just really wild that we're here. And Josh, I hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously the greater production takes the pressure acutely off of him. But I think the problem is that the thinner and thinner this roster gets, the more and more expectations are left on those that are still on the roster. And he's one of them that's easy to point at and go, you're getting paid a lot of money to not really produce a whole lot. And so I think at this point, there's a few intangible things that Houston has to hope for. One is for dad's strength to be a real deal. The other, that maybe the All-Star break gives him a refresh, or that maybe the adjustment year is a thing, a la Josh Hader. Final thoughts before we're out the door, guys.
I'll follow on Walker. If the Astros ever get fully healthy, right, you separate the money, which is tough to do. First base is supposed to be an offensive position. You move that aside. Right, if Christian Walker is batting 8th in the lineup, which was the depth to which Abreu sunk at times. We've seen Walker as low as 7, but in the run-up to the break, we also still saw him 4th and 5th. Right? If their lineup is what it's supposed to be, Pena, Paredes, and then in whatever order, Alvarez and Altuve and Cam Smith and Jake Myers, and you're shoving Yiner and Walker down to the 7 and 8 spots, and then whoever's batting 9th filling out the lineup, it's not as glaring an offensive abyss as when Joe Espada is writing Walker in the cleanup spot or 5th in the lineup.
Yeah, that's where this really got ugly. That's what I was thinking too, Charlie. When you saw Walker go down to 7th, you're like, okay, but then you lose Pena, you lose Jake Myers, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the lineup card again. You're like, oh, how did Christian Walker get back to hitting 4th or 5th? Ooh, this is gross. That's just where they are at this point, unfortunately.
13 games in 13 days coming out of the break, starting with the 3 in Seattle. Astros have played 8 more home games than they have road games. Now, they picked it up dramatically on the road, but Seattle and Arizona, a challenging road trip coming out. If they come home from this road trip still ahead by 5 games, they're the overwhelming favorite to make it 8 consecutive full season American League West championships.
You know, I think some of the other things to watch for as the season unfolds, how do guys respond coming off of the IL? Can Jeremy Pena continue his season after this layoff? How does Jake Myers respond to this layoff? How does Yordan Alvarez look when he gets back to the team? Spencer Arrighetti. So, Owie. So just, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how these guys, because Pena was having his best season. Can he continue that on the other side of this break? Same thing with Myers, having a breakout season. He was having a good season prior to injuring his shoulder. We'll see, if he can respond to this. So I think if they do, I think it makes it that much more likely that this is who they can be as players. One last reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click like on the video. And if you listen on podcasts and apps like Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating while you're here. Next scheduled episode drops Monday, so make sure you subscribe to this channel with notifications on. For Charlie and Josh, I'm Brandon saying so long. Thanks for listening. And as always, go Stros.